So what did Brighton do about Carlos Baleba, a player who in the last few weeks has looked really out of form, and ever since that Man United interest has kind of been a different player for Brighton? Welcome to Seagulls Central. My name is Adam MacDonald and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you very much for clicking on this video. If you're new here, this is your first time, welcome along. And if you've been here before, welcome back. As I always say, if you find yourself returning to this channel and you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button if you want all the best, fastest and most interesting, the liveliest, the first to the reaction in terms of Brighton news. This is the place to be, Seagulls Central. Thank you very much for coming along. So I want to get into today Carlos Baleba, the kind of Carlos Baleba problem, I suppose maybe we could call it. And the problem essentially is, all of us Brighton fans will be aware of it, it's the kind of, let's just call it how it is, pretty poor start to the season that he's had. A player who pretty much was our player of the season last season. Okay, JP Van Hecke won it. João Pedro, many other players, Mitoma having brilliant seasons. Baleba was up there as one of our best players. And I think there was an element of surprise a little bit among some of us, certainly me, that maybe we weren't going to sell him this summer. It kind of felt like at the start of the summer, if you had to kind of pinpoint a few players we might have sold, João Pedro seemed an obvious one. I think Stupinian maybe seemed a slightly less obvious one, but one that kind of made a bit of sense. And then Baleba, it kind of felt like this guy's ready for a big move. This guy's ready to go to the next level. But will anyone come in for him? Will anyone want to pay the money this summer? It felt like a lot of the big clubs were focusing on strikers, particularly this summer. And that kind of defensive midfielder, ball winner, energy, legs in midfield kind of profile wasn't something that clubs were prepared to spend big money on this summer. Now, you think about Man United, and obviously they were the ones who showed the kind of strongest interest. And it was only interest by all reports in Carlos Baleba in the summer. It seemed like they ended up prioritising a striker themselves over a midfielder, which is interesting really, because I suppose you could argue that actually they probably need a midfielder a little bit more than they do Sesko, a player who hasn't looked brilliant so far for Man United. Anyway, let's talk about him for Brighton. I think his start to the season has been quite poor. I think we've got to take into account the fact that he hasn't played, he didn't play loads of games in pre-season, and that is one thing I come back to. I think we saw it in the first couple of games where we saw him look a bit poor, wasn't playing full 90 minutes, seemed a bit sloppy in possession. I remember particularly watching him, I think it was against Man City. He looked very poor on the ball, giving the ball away a lot. And I'd kind of put a lot of that down to, okay, well, the guy was injured for a good chunk of pre-season. He was kind of late to some of the pre-season matches. We didn't see him play in every single game in the same way that many players who are in our starting 11 now got that, got those minutes under the belt. He didn't get that. And I put a lot of the kind of poor performance sloppiness down to that lack of sharpness, because the way he is playing isn't like someone who has lost all their talent overnight. It's not like they've forgotten how to kind of do the role. He was really good at this and now he's really bad at it. It kind of just feels to me a little bit more of a concentration thing, a mindset thing, a sharpness thing. I think that's the main word I want to use. It feels like a sharpness thing. He just feels a bit sloppy, a bit less quick to the ball, a bit less, attentive, a bit less rapid in getting in things, nippy, intercepting. All of these kind of things seem like he's playing at kind of 60% or so compared to the player that we really know. Now, you could argue that is just a lack of sharpness, a lack of fitness. The other kind of argument is that his head's been turned and that is affecting performances. Now, this is something that I personally don't quite understand and can't massively get my head around. And I'd love to know in the comments your thoughts on this, whether you would disagree or agree with this. But I kind of feel like, okay, you might be there playing a game of football, massively distracted. You might be distracted by transfer interest. We're playing Man City at home today. Okay, let's get up for it. Oh, but this Man United news, it's been dominated. They wanted me. I really wanted to go there. I'm gutted it didn't go through. That might be occupying your mind when you sat at home on a Thursday night after training and you're watching a bit of TV and you're thinking, God, no, your internal thoughts as you're in the shower, all these things. Surely when you're in a game, you play the game. You play the game. If I right now went to go and play 5-a-side, 6-a-side, 11-a-side football, I might have all these things in my life at the moment that I'm thinking about privately, all of the worries and the tribulations that you go through as a human being. When I get on the football pitch, I'm loving it. That's the one place where you don't think about that kind of thing. And that's the thing that I can't quite understand in terms of people talk about noise affecting the way someone plays football. Maybe this just, I haven't played the game at the top level. I don't understand it. I'm just not sure how that affects your ability to play football at the highest level, unless you are literally downing tools. You are training poorly, maybe deliberately. Your attitude is maybe changed. Therefore, you're not as sharp. I don't suspect that's happened in his case. By all accounts, he's been, the model pro in terms of this. You heard in the summer he wasn't coming out speaking about anything. There were no kind of agent plays to kind of, force any moves or kind of work against the club to get the move or anything. It felt like it was all very above board and all very respectful, and it was just interest. But clearly, it seems it's affected him. Now, the quotes from Fabian Hurzeler after the game on the weekend against Tottenham was kind of talking around, because obviously Baleba came off at half-time. The quote was that he was feeling a bit tired, he was feeling not particularly sharp, which is something I find interesting considering he hasn't played loads of minutes. I think the use of the phrase tired is a bit weird. Maybe you could kind of say he wasn't ready to play 90 minutes because he hasn't played loads of football in the last kind of 2 months or so. I think that would be kind of more understandable. The fact he said tired kind of surprises me a little bit, because it's kind of like, I'd be shocked if you were tired after playing only 45 minutes of football. You'd think, anyway. That was the kind of phrase used by Fabian Hurzeler. And then after the game, he went into the quotes a little bit more. He kind of spoke around how, he understands it must be a difficult thing for a player to go through. He's a young lad. Obviously, these aren't the words he said, but this was the kind of essence of what he was saying. Saying he's a young lad. Obviously, you're impressionable at that age. That kind of thing would be a big deal to him. You can understand why it might create some kind of, complications in your mind. It might make you lacking in focus, or kind of your head might be gone a little bit in moments, and it's about kind of bringing him back down to earth. So that was a kind of open admission, in much less kind of convoluted way that I said it there, an open admission of that fact that he has been a little bit distracted. I don't know. I just find that interesting. Look, Baleba will almost certainly get his move, whether it's to Man United or not. He'll get his move to a elite European club summer of 2026. Absolutely, he will get there. A club will pay the 100 million plus, 110, 15 million pounds that it will take to get him out of Brighton. The market value that Brighton clearly decide that he is worth, which absolutely he is worth, in excess of 100 million. He will get that move and he'll play at the elite European level. Now, my question would be, it's obviously not in his interest to play badly, is it? If he wants to move in the next 6 to 9 months, it's obviously not in his interest to play badly. So, do I think he's deliberately kind of downing tools? Absolutely, no, I do not. Do I think he's deliberately playing badly? Absolutely, no, I do not. But do I think there's something going on there? Clearly, he looks like a shadow of himself. But as I say, you'd think if your mindset was, I'm going to smash out this season and get my big move next year, it would be in your interest to play well. The last thing you'd want to do is kind of turn off suitors because you've had a poor season. So do I trust him to turn it around? Absolutely. He is one hell of a player. I've spoken around it before. I think you look at players like Bissouma, you look at players like Caicedo, who Brighton have had in that position. I think stylistically, he's a mould between the two. He's got that ball carrying ability, that kind of engine that kind of Bissouma had, where with the kind of interceptions and the I meant to say ball carrying ability for Bissouma. That ability to get around the pitch like Bissouma, and then the kind of tackling and the intercepting and the ball playing of someone like Caicedo. And I think he's the perfect combination of those two players stylistically. And I actually think he's better than both of them were in their times at Brighton. Now, look, Caicedo might go on to be even better than all of them one day. But in terms of assessing them at their time at Brighton, I think Baleba is better than both of them compared to their times at Brighton. So it's a massively, massively talented player, and a player who I absolutely 100% without a doubt back to turn it around, to find his form again. I just think I just find the whole thing quite interesting. And clearly, Brighton play best when Carlos Baleba is playing his best. That's absolutely without a doubt. I think we saw it in the second half against Spurs. We kind of lost that momentum. We lost that energy a little bit. That ability to win the ball back, to get about the pitch, to show those legs, those energy. It's so, so important. And clearly, he's at a stage where you might feel, look, I've done 2 years at Brighton, I want to move on. And that absolutely will happen. I understand that. But the geezer's like 20 years old. And he's got a long career ahead of him in the Premier League, and I think it's one. Obviously we're going to see the best of him this season, but it's about how we get to that point, because I do think it is quite interesting. Let me know what you think. Do you think it's surprising that Baleba's not showing his best form? Do you think it's a result of him kind of being distracted by the Man United story? Do you think it's just a fitness thing? How do you think that kind of, that those thoughts away from a football pitch actually translate themselves onto the football pitch? I'd love to know your thoughts on that, whether you think I've kind of got that wrong or read that one wrong, and how do you think, if at all, he will turn this around in the next few weeks or months. Let me know. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you on the next one when we will dig in to all the latest, all the biggest Brighton and Hove Albion stories. If you haven't already and you've got this far in the video, you keep finding yourself coming back to the channel, hit the subscribe button, turn your notifications on, get in the likes, get in the comments, and get supporting this channel. I really, really appreciate it. And we are churning the videos out. We're doing it a few times a week for all the quickest, biggest, best Brighton content out there. This is the place to be. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you on the next video. And as always, up the Albion.